If there were two or three things that you could say would be the most important thing that, at grassroots level we should focus on in terms of trying to take the House back in 2018, I mean, that election's only 15 months away. What are the two or three things you would suggest?
Well, unfortunately, money's a part of it, so I'd go to the DCCC. I'd look where the $25 here or there makes a difference. It sends a message. If you have friends in red districts, engage them, call them. There's a podcast that I will get during the next question. Actually, my son is visiting from Los Angeles, and his girlfriend was giving me a list of podcasts to, I'll find it. But it's something that people like us, but it's actually you engage people on their social media. Who's heard of the book Strangers in Their Own Land by a wonderful Berkeley professor? And she did 5 years of research in Louisiana to figure out why people voted against their own interest and talk to them in research. So there's a growing ability to try to talk to people in different areas, to just engage them and tell them, this is the way I feel, why do you feel the way you do? So I think that's really important. So if you have friends or relatives, we're Californians, many of us moved here from somewhere else, I would say that's really powerful. But I'd go to the DCCC, I'd go to the DNC. We've got our challenges. I've got a picture of a bumper sticker. I came out of my apartment a block away at First in Carolina from my office a week ago, and there was this great bumper sticker, and it said, Democrats, we're not perfect, but we're not crazy either.
And we think that there's still, or that there is a role for indivisible groups also in the electoral process. We first started seeing that manifest a little bit with the Georgia 6 race and the John Ossoff race, which, as you all know, was traditionally very strongly Republican. Democrats closed that gap. If in 2018, Democrats are able to close gaps in all these House races that the congressman pointed out, then to that extent, then we can retake the majority in 2018. And Indivisible's thinking about ways to sort of make those connections and make that the energy that we see around policy and congressional activism and advocacy now translate to the ballot box next year.
One last thing, that the book on redistricting is a quote from one of the main Republican architects saying that Democrats, they're more organized in this redistricting, but it will take them 20 or 30 years to be in a par where the Republicans are. And then he says the only way you'll get the House back in 2018, this is before the election, I assume he thought the outcome was going to be different for president, so the only way you'll get the presidency back is if you had a really, really abysmally awful Republican president in office.
Just to highlight one race that the congressman put up there, Darrell Issa. I believe there are close to 40 indivisible groups in that district, in Darrell Issa's district. So you're starting to see a basis for political organizing there.
Charlie?
Yes, Charlie Peters from Hayward. A great pleasure to be here and to see you today, sir. It's been a long, interesting trail. A couple of quick questions. Number one is, we've seen a little news that you have been having some particular interest in healthcare issues. Wondered if you had any update on that, for one. And for two, I got today, I've noted where there is a committee that has passed unanimously a bill about self-driving cars and who I could talk to get some further information about that.
Okay. Charlie has stalked me since my days on the California Resources Board, which is another great, amazing board. If you read today, Tesla with its Model 3 is somebody who's been involved in alternative fuels when I was on the Air Resources Board 20 years, to see what we're about to do in California, and it's because of government. It's because of the requirements we put on the auto manufacturers. And I spent a lot of time in Detroit and in Japan and in Germany negotiating some of these things with my colleagues. We're about to transform the world when it comes to what renewable fuels are already doing in California with clean cars. So Charlie, with autonomous vehicles, we actually have one of the nation's leading sites here at the Concord Naval Weapons Station that the Coast Transportation Authority is getting a grant from. So afterwards, I'll be happy to talk to you about that. And on the health side, As many of you know, when I went to Congress, I was diagnosed with a form of leukemia. I went through cancer treatment. It's not cured. It's the kind of cancer that doesn't get cured right now, but it's manageable, so I get the job done, so I appreciate you asking. But I do want to, I started a congressional caucus, Cancer Survivors Caucus, with a Republican from Texas, Congressman Poe, who's also gone through cancer. There's about probably 30 members right now, and we're working on legislation. This is one thing, this is a perfect example. We had our priorities right. Sorry, the Department of Defense's budget is almost $700 billion. We have a report from an independent group of business people who started during the Nixon administration, who oversee the department's budget. They came to the Oversight and Government Reform Committee and said, we've identified with McKinsey that there's $125 billion worth of waste. I will not vote for the Defense Department's appropriation until they fix that. And we spent $40 billion at the National Institutes for Health. Those $40 billion since 1970 have contributed $77 trillion to the US economy by extending people's lives. If we have a priority right, those should be flipped. I mean, we could change the environment, we could change inequality, we could extend people's lives like mine. I was extended by your tax dollars in investment in the National Institute for Health. If we had our priorities right, if we had control of both houses of Congress, if we had control of those legislatures, we wouldn't be wasting $125 billion giving checks to companies like Halliburton to waste money.
Thank you, Mark. Ellis Goldberg from Danville, California. I recently have been hearing about something called a better deal rolled out by the DNC, Mrs. Pelosi, and Chuck Schumer. And basically what it says is a better deal, better jobs, better wages, better future. This is the formula that lost us the last election, unfortunately. And the Democratic Party has to stand for democracy. That's what we're named after. And we have to stand for justice. Democracy stands for getting money out of politics, protecting our vote, making sure voters aren't disenfranchised by Kirk Corbeck and his commission. And we also have to stand for justice. We have to stand for health care for all and all of those things that go under the justice plan. And we have to stand for getting rid of or pushing back on climate change. If we're not the party of those things, we are not going to win in 2018 or 2020. And please take this message back to Chuck Schumer, Pelosi, and Tom Perez. Tell them that the Democrats of Congress want a full spectrum campaign, not this bribe, we can give you better jobs than the other guys can, we can give you a better deal. We want to take back the deck of cards and deal from the top of the deck, not from the bottom of the deck.
I would just say from Indivisible's point of view, most of us are former Democratic staffers, but we are not a Democratic organization. We are independent progressives. And we think that just like the Tea Party held Republicans to account 8 years ago, that we have a role to make sure that Democrats are standing up and standing strong and always embracing progressive values. And those values include protecting vulnerable communities and standing up for health care as a human right and making sure that racial justice is at the top of the Democratic agenda.
I just think 3 of my colleagues who were very involved in this, Hakeem Jeffries, who's a wonderful progressive Democrat from New York, Shelley Bustos from Illinois, and David Cicilline from Rhode Island. Those are the 3 rank and file people who were elected to work on our message. Messaging drives me crazy. I'm not good at it. I drone on and on. I admit I'm not good at sound bites. But how you message is important. I think one of our big challenges, I'm very involved, as I've told some of you, in an initiative I started with Mark McCann from Wisconsin on the future of work, wages, and labor. I'm on the Labor Committee. The Labor Committee in the U.S. House of Representatives is described as the committee who cares about little people. I want to stay there. The level of, we're not communicating, I don't think, the level of despair in many of the communities that have been left behind by this economy. And it's not just innovation, most of it is attributable to capital and venture capital and the squeezing of the American workers. So when you hear, oh, you're a Luddite, you don't understand that automation is changing everything. Yes, we've got to figure that out. But when you look at the research and you start looking at the targets, then you look at the effect of not enforcing antitrust laws for the last 20 years in this country. You look at monopolies, and that's where the lion's share is. So what I always say is Americans have never been afraid of the future, and Californians in particular, we chase right after it, but we've left too many people behind, and we've always been a country, whether it's in the military or all of us, we don't leave people, Americans, behind. We go back and bring them along. So for us in California, that's particularly true. Messaging drives me crazy. We can do a better job, but democracy isn't a soundbite. I mean, we need that kind of communication. I recognize that. Wonderful communicators like Franklin Roosevelt and Obama, when he ran the first time in particular, if it was so easy, a lot of people would be communicating a lot better. This is all of us engaging, and I appreciate your comments, Ellis, because that's kind of what I would refer to as a kick in the ass to somebody like me. It's like, go back there and tell them this isn't enough.
Thank you. I think everybody here would agree with me that you are a model of accessibility. So appreciate that. But I need some advice, and I think the rest of us do as well. We have a local assemblyman who has refused to meet with an interfaith group, a group of people representing many in this room concerning SB 54, the California Values Act. He's met with the sheriff, he meets with all sorts of people. He's refused to meet with his constituents. I'm Dan, I live in Pleasant Hill. What advice would you give us for getting our assemblyman to meet with us, or an alternative?
Well, I sometimes Assemblyman Grayson,
Yes.
Let's talk, and I will talk to him and see how we get him to engage and sit down and meet with you.
Appreciate that, thank you.
For those who know the Indivisible Guide, there are ways to address that issue in Congress that I think are applicable for assembly members, other levels of government. But if they won't meet with you, rallying outside of their offices, inviting the press to come, taking photos and video, posting it on social media. Once the public becomes more aware of that particular issue, there's evidence that electeds begin to sort of change their willingness to meet with their constituents.
The master of understatement is Pavlov dog was smarter than most of us, so he'll respond.
Here's a soundbite for you. The election was rigged in 1787. So progressives should keep in the forefront of their minds the fact that as long as the Electoral College is in place, as long as the primary and convention circus is in place that denied the Democrat who could have won in the last cycle the chance to be on the November ballot, as long as the Senate is the way it is, and of course the House, the districting. So there's one small effort that recognizes this. I want to ask if you are a co-sponsor of Don Byers' Fair Representation Act, and if not, why not?
Don and I talked about it. I'm proud to say I'm a co-author. I believe I'm one of the original co-authors.
Hi. So in your presentation, you talked multiple times about redistricting, the way boundaries are drawn. And obviously in 2020, that's when the district boundaries are going to be redrawn. That depends on having an accurate and effective census. And some of the news about that has been pretty discouraging. Like the budget hasn't been increased for a number of years. The current director, the director resigned a couple of months ago. So what measures are you prepared to take to either increase the budget for the Census Bureau so that it can conduct a fair and accurate census in 2020 and or ensure the integrity of the process more broadly?
So this is another part of the process, is they don't want everybody to vote. I mean, we've got an example of, including in this state, of bills that would suppress voter turnout. That's very targeted to people who have been disenfranchised historically, and this is another example. So I know we've had efforts in the House, I can't remember the bill numbers, but I'm on those. We have to fully fund the census. We also have to make sure states are held accountable, because the legislatures, and particularly the governors who control the census at that level, we had this battle in California with Governor Schwarzenegger, who didn't want to fully fund the census here. So this is something we got to be aware of and be engaged with, and if you want to work more closely with our office to make sure that we're making sure we're doing everything we can, but it's important. But this is an example of how insidious this is. At every opportunity, the same people who did redistricting are trying to leverage their ability to make sure people have less of an impact in democracy. And I don't know if Jeremy wants that.
Good morning. I'm Michelle, a transgender veteran. I fought for you. Will you fight for me? We fought for all of you. Will you fight for us?
Yes, and I just want to, some of you probably read about this, the budget in the military for transgender, and they're still studying, making sure that transgender members of the military, who give enormous value to the military, this was just, he did it ineptly, but as he always does, but it's driven to his base, and people who don't believe in the things that we believe in. So I think the number was, the budget in the Department of Defense for Viagra was like $50 million a year, and for transgender members it was like $4 million a year. I've got to have my filters working.
Norma Bishop, Walnut Creek. First of all, I'd like to thank you and your fabulous staff. I'm also a Navy veteran, 21 years. You solved a seemingly intractable problem for me with the Department of Finance accounting system, so thank you. It seems to me that what 2016 proved was that neither party had a strong, coherent platform and a way of vetting candidates. That's a real horror story. So if we look at the Democrats in 2020 or even 2018, how are the progressives going to ensure that that platform is in place, is progressive, and is out front where the people are, not where the party is? For instance, single payer. That a better deal sounds like it was written by Donald Trump, the art of the deal.
Yeah.
And so that's my question. How do progressives get out in front with the Democratic platform?
Let Jeremy, maybe you want to try that?
No.
I'm not dodging it. I think you have to do what you're doing. So when I was in the legislature, every bill we had to do universal health care for all, I was a co-author of. First Sheila Kuehl, who's now a LA County supervisor, then Mark Leno, who's now in the process of running the mayor of San Francisco, they carried the bill. This year, Tony Atkins and Ricardo Lara, two of my really good friends in the legislature, they introduced the bill. Unfortunately, in the legislative process, the way the rules are written, the Appropriations Committee has to analyze what it would cost to do it in the fiscal year. So you've got a lot of headlines that said you can't do it. Well, you can't do it in 1 year. You can't change a fifth of the US GDP in 1 year. That doesn't mean you can't do it. So the previous bills were an iteration. So just do Medicare for all, but maybe you do it over the course of 10 or 20 years. And if you do that, you actually drop costs and raise quality. So how do you get that? I don't think this is time for being incremental. I just think we're in a crisis in this country, and you can see it in the polling that people are starting to go, why is it that the rest of the industrialized world has better health care and it's cheaper and they have better outcomes? I mean, why is it that we're the outlier in this. And the reason is because you have people who are making millions of dollars and the system is wasteful. So take them out. Take them out of the system.
And Indivisible is still thinking through how to have a proactive, progressive platform. There's been a lot of focus on healthcare for understandable reasons. I mean, the fact is, for the next year, we're still largely on the defense, right? And there's going to be other terrible policies coming our way. But we also think that we do need to be thinking about how to make sure that progressives are, and indivisible groups are backing a proactive agenda, and how to make sure that the groups that are on the ground are holding their members of Congress, even including Democrats, to account for that.
Congressman, this will be our last question.
Okay, so if you haven't had your question asked, I'll hang around. We'll answer the questions as best we can. If for some reason you can't hang around, send us emails. Almost, if it's political, send it to go through our political website. And you can go through, if it's a question to Jeremy. If it's policy, which many of these are, feel free to send them to the congressional website. If it turns out that we have some questions about whether it's too political, we'll answer them appropriately.
Hi, Congressman. Tony Ricci from Clayton. What I was wondering was, can California set an example in the form of healthcare? We're virtually a nation on ourselves. There's a lot of ideas through the state legislature that seem to be kind of bogged down that might improve things and set an example for the rest of the country. Similarly, the Paris Accord, although these are country agreements, the state of California could do a symbolic thing in that regard and work with industry in the state to make it work and show the rest of the country that it can work. And as a result, maybe make some important change. Just want to get your thoughts.
So we've done that. Jimmy Carter once famously said, what happens in California happens in the United States eventually. So on climate change, because of the way the U.S. Clean Air Act is written, it actually carves out California to allow us to go further. On traditional pollutants, on carbon, we've been able to do the same thing. There's been talk that the Republicans want to take that away. It's called the California waiver. So if they start moving on that, we need you folks to help it. It would be a huge step backwards because Governor Brown, Governor Schwarzenegger has been bipartisan. We go further when it comes on public health and air quality in almost every arena. But back to the original comment, California and the Bay Area and Contra Costa County have been leaders on the progressive movement, and we should continue to do the same thing. So don't wait for Congress, don't wait for Alabama and Mississippi. We do it here first, and then they follow us if they're smart.
Indivisible has resources on our website on climate change. As these policies, as deregulation starts to come through Congress, we'll have more. Please continue meeting with your groups, using our resources and our toolkits on how to take action. And when that comes before the House, we're going to give them help.
So I'm going to ask Jeremy to conclude. I will conclude just by saying thank you very much. So we're going to do another one of these. It will take us a few months to do it. We'll be happy to work with, obviously, Indivisible, and thank you again for Jeremy, but everybody from Indivisible who's been so involved in this event, everyone who's been involved, thank you for coming. We want to continue this, and as Jeremy said, we want to make it sustainable right here in this district. So we're going to keep working on it. Understand that our resources are somewhat limited in terms of our budget on the political side and our commitments to getting Congress back nationally. But that doesn't mean that's an excuse. It's just we're going to work on this and keep making it better. So thanks for coming. Please give us suggestions. And I have 2 town halls on the public side in the next month. So go to our website and just so you know, we'll continue to be out there. And then lastly, being a citizen of this country is a real gift, and how, whatever time all of us have to do that and to fight for what's right, we're lucky, I suppose. Eric Swalwell was sitting next to me on the plane coming back yesterday. There was a difference in age, so we were talking about how challenged we were, but then how incredibly proud we are of how both the progressive movement, our constituents, have stood up and have made sure that the constitutional institutions that were set up in this country and evolved so far are holding